Hey guys, I'm in the barn today and I want to talk about a subject that I see a lot in my body work side of my life, in my real job. So I ride dressage, so I actually work on a lot of dressage horses, and you see a couple different, I don't want to say pathologies, but like some typical things that horses exhibit, and kind of all the time. And the two big places that horses have issues is dressage, well, there's three. The thoracic sling area, the pelvis, and the pole. That's always like three things that even if they don't have an injury, even if they're not having a problem there, I usually have to work on those areas when I'm working on them. So there's a lot of talk about the thoracic sling stuff going on right now, which I think is good. It's bringing some recognition to it. I want to caution, though, that this whole idea that the horse's head always needs to be down and low in order to develop the thoracic sling is actually erroneous. So in the development of a dressage horse, their natural carriage is going to be more on the forehand as a youngster. And then it's slowly going to shift back on the haunches, and the front end will lift. So that means that the thoracic sling has to be able to draw the withers up out of the body. Really doesn't have as much to do with head and neck position as it has to do with those withers being able to be drawn up out of the body from a lifted back, where their core is engaged and where their spine is stabilized by postural muscles, ones that don't take a lot of effort to keep. If they're having to use large motor muscles to keep their posture, they're going to get tired, and it's going to be a problem. So it's got to be the postural muscles that are holding them, and develop those postural muscles over time. If you have a horse that is inverting their back, they're using motor muscles to keep their posture. If they are lifting their head and bracing their brachiocephalic, they're using their motor muscles, their muscles for locomotion. So when you have that kind of horse, yes, it is super important to teach them the opposite, which is that the brachiocephalic releases, that the head comes down, that the neck elongates, that the back comes up. And you might have to spend some time there in re-educating them, especially the horses that like every little thing that bothers them, they have that startle response where they raise their head and neck, they lower their back, they kind of look up. It's like if they saw a tiger off on the hillside kind of look, right? And some horses can do this because of training. Some horses can do this because it's sort of their natural posture. I don't want to say natural posture, but it's their go-to posture. Let's say that. And so we have to re-educate them that shouldn't be their go-to posture, and that there is a better, more efficient biomechanical way to use their body. But I want to caution in this thing of like, that the only thing that works for that is this head down posture, because that's not true. And the reason that that's not true is because you can get stuck there. I see these stories of people are like, 6 and 12 months later, they're still working on the ground in this posture. And then I either feel like, well, it's either, I have a couple feelings about that. Maybe I'll just keep them to myself. So what I always this is how I like to think about it. I always have to ride the horse that I have underneath of me. I always have to train on the ground the horse that I have in front of me. And any of these blanket statements that treat all horses the same, to me, do not do the training justice. That would be the number one takeaway from the video, that you have to look at the horse in front of you. And every horse is going to need something different, because it's not just about their neck posture. It's also about their back. It's also about their pelvis. It's also about their poll. It's about how their front limbs work. It's about their anatomy. It's about their conformation. And it's about how they use themselves, their biomechanics. Sometimes you'll look at a horse and you'll think that biomechanically it's going to come out and do some weird things, and somehow it doesn't. Biomechanically, it starts to come together. I think about this a little bit with, if you've ever been to like a position clinic and you're doing position work on the ground before you ever get on your horse, and you're like, oh yeah, I'm going to pretend here. My left shoulder drops, and you work on these different things, and you get to where you're like this, and then you get on the horse and you immediately go like this, because it's muscle memory, right? So you gotta be able to put it out of conscious thought and still be able to do it. So, and that's a little bit with the horses, is they've got to be able to biomechanically use themselves without having to concentrate on it, and that does take time. What I like to look at is this idea of, now, if I have a horse that's trained all the way to Grand Prix, I want to be able to put it in any of the frames from 3 to Grand Prix, and at any time be able to have that flexibility of the frame. If I have a 4th level horse, I want to be able to take it from the 3 to the 4th level spot in its frame. It's just like how we play with tempo. How do we get better power? How do we get better tempo? How do we get different gaits? That, it's like all the masters talk about, you need at least 20 different trots, right? So how do we get that? We get that by actually practicing that, by actually doing the different trots, and building a repertoire of how many trots we have. And the same thing goes for posture, and goes for the biomechanics of the horse, is that we want them to be able to do the whole range. So we want them to be able to stretch out and go long and low. We want them to be able to come up in like a 1st level frame and open their throat latch and come out to the bit. We want to be able to bring them up a little bit more and have them engage their thoracic sling and like pull their withers out of the body, and that will develop more and more and more as they go up through the levels. Where you always know that you have to go back to the previous step is if, when asking for any of this more engagement with them, they start to do the things that are negatively going to affect their soundness. So they start bracing somewhere. They start, hollowing. They start short stepping behind. They start getting tight in their neck. And unfortunately, it is a little too common how much tension we see in dressage horses. In the show environment, I think that's a little bit hard to make harsh judgments with people, because some horses just naturally get more on the muscle in a show environment. So please be careful about judging other people that way. But in our day-to-day work, we really want to go for, no tension. So that brings me to my next point, which is I see a lot of horses that are either ridden in a lot of tension, and there's like a lot of oomph to them, or I see horses ridden under none. And neither one of them is correct. And you're like, well, Rebecca, you don't want tension. No, you don't want tension. But you do need to have a little bit of what Mary Wanless calls stuffing, right? So it's just like us. We could be like no stuffing, and we could be just like this doll that didn't get enough stuffing put in it, and it's just sitting there and it's slumped over. You could have, like a little bit more stuffing. You could have a little more, or you could have a lot of stuffing, right? And just be like really rigid. And so it's a continuum. It's not an all or nothing kind of thing. And it's this, and so with our own body, it's the same with the horse. The reason why I'm bringing this up is because a lot of times people think, okay, my horse needs to go out to the bit and their head needs to go down, and we concentrate on the head, right? That's how a lot of riders are like, oh, what's their head doing? That's what we see. It's what we think is correct. It's like, oh, I don't want somebody to think that my horse is, you know, up above the bit, right? But the problem with that is there's not a lot of stuffing to this posture. And of course, we don't want to put so much stuffing in it that the horse is going around tense. But we need to have this sort of like, to engage the core muscles and to stabilize the spine in order to carry rider weight correctly. There has to be a little bit of like, I call it the isometric contraction, but there's got to be a little bit of stuffing in there. And so a lot of times you'll see horses that are just nicely swinging and going around. That's great for the warm-up. That's great for loosening. But at some point, there's got to be a little more oomph to it. And I equate it a little bit to, I can lift my arm and engage my bicep muscle. And this really is, well, one, it's super easy because it's just my arm. It's just the weight of my forearm. But I'm not really, you know, it's just la, la, la. I can actually kind of swing it, right? If I just slightly resist and I try and go slow and I try and put it under like a little bit of resistance, I already have like more oomph to this arm. It's not like, you know, it's not that. But there is a little bit of oomph. And the same thing is like, we just don't want the horse to release the top line. We also want the horse to engage the core. We want the horse to engage the paravertebrals. We don't want them to, and the multifidus muscle and all of those. We don't want them to engage the long muscles that they're using for locomotion, but we do need them to engage their stabilizing muscles. This is what protects the back from dropping as rider weight comes on, and it allows them to protect their spine. Think about if you were your niece or your daughter or your nephew or your son or whatever wanted to ride you like a horse, and you get on the ground on your all fours. And it's like, and you start to like, they get on you and they're a little heavy and you start to sink down. Well, that hurts your back. But if you just engage your core a little bit, you can kind of have a nice level spot that you can absorb the weight. And that is the same thing that we want from the horse. So there's got to be a little bit of engagement of there that's going to create a little bit of oomph or a little bit of stuffing to the horse. And that is super important to protect the horse's back with rider weight. Now, where that goes erroneous is when it's too much, right? And then the horse has kind of like stabilized it so much that it's filling its legs, right? And then it's gotten its long muscles involved in that stabilization and it's just gotten tight. Or if it's pulled in from the front and just the neck is really tight and everything else is loose, right? So there's 1,000 things that could go wrong with that. But I just wanted to kind of explain that theory so that you understand how the horse has to be able to engage in order to carry rider weight. It's not just about putting their head down and swinging around, okay? So, and then in that, you should be able to shift the frame of the horse, not by shortening the neck, but by allowing the core to engage more, the thoracic sling to draw the withers up, the hind legs to sit and bend more and carry the horse. And that's how you get the different positionings as far as you go up through the levels. So if you have any questions about that, feel free to put them in the comments below and I'll try to answer them to the best of my knowledge, because sometimes in explaining things, things can be lost in translation. All right, see you next time, guys.